Welcome to the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. This is episode number 477. Today, I am talking about why it is important to perform a time audit. Now let's dive in. Hey, I'm Taylor Bradford, host of the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Boss Girl Creative. I help small business owners turn their purpose into a paycheck, and it starts with visibility. In the online world, visibility equates to sales. So if you're dreaming of being the next $1 million entrepreneur, you've come to the right place because weekly I share visibility tips, brand advice, and business resources. So grab a notebook, your favorite pen, and a beverage, and let's do the work. Hello, welcome to episode 477. I'm your host, Taylor Bradford. I'm excited that you're here. Today I'm talking about why having or performing a time audit is important. And before we get into this week's episode, let's chat about what's been going on in the land of social media. Social media headline number one, Meta removes 63,000 Instagram accounts linked to sextortion scams. Meta says that the accounts were associated with a known scam group called the Yahoo Boys. Social media headline number two, TikTok adds custom thumbnail option for clips. This is a new way to customize your TikTok videos. Social media headline number three, the Justice Department shares details of the case against TikTok. Why is TikTok facing a potential ban in the U.S.? The Justice Department claims the platform tracked users' views on sensitive issues. Social media headline number four, Instagram tests new Reels filter for posts with notes. Another way to facilitate more notes engagement. Social media headline number five, X adds new setting to opt out of sharing data to train Grok. A new setting on data permissions for Grok was quietly added and users opted in by default. Heads up. And that wraps up this week's social media headlines. Okay, so we're talking about time audit. And before I get into the nuts and bolts of this week's episode, just wanted to quickly share that I am heading back on vacation and the next couple of weeks' episodes will already be recorded. But I can't give you the social media headlines for that week's episode until I get into that particular week. So you will hear some audio differences because I'll actually have to be recording from my phone because I will not be able to take my gear with me on this trip. Actually, you know what? I could, but the place we're staying is just not conducive for me to record the entire episode, and I honestly just really don't want to lug all of this gear to Colorado with me. So the social media headlines will come in a different audio sound than the actual week's episode, which I am sitting down and recording back to back to back as I record this week's episode 477. So heads up, stay tuned. That's what's coming down the pipeline. Also, wanted to share that this week's episode is brought to you by Dubsado, and Dubsado is a software that I actually use. I've been a paid subscriber to Dubsado since March of 2019, so I've used Dubsado in my business specifically for Sugar Creek for over 5 years, and Dubsado calls themselves a business management solution. I call it a CRM, a client relationship manager. It ultimately helps me stay organized, manage my invoices and contracts, get paid, those very important components and pieces to running a business. It has a scheduler, so I can use that to schedule consults, whether they're in person or via phone. I can utilize the scheduler in a variety of ways. So like I can set up a schedule for client consults, I can also set up a separate schedule for vendors to come out and take a peek at my collection or have a meeting or what have you. And then I've used it to book my studio. I actually have a wild story to share about booking my studio that happened this weekend. And anyways, Dubsado has been literally like the backbone of running Sugar Creek for 5 years. And it has greatly, vastly changed or aided, because before it was all manual that I was, doing things, but it has greatly helped me do more in my business and stay better organized, but also it allows me to send out invoices that I can get paid. I just link my Square account through Dubsado. They also have it where you can link Stripe if you want to do that. And it just makes things so freaking easy for me to manage Sugar Creek. Like, I legitimately have nearly every piece of my inventory in Dubsado so that I can build out a client proposal fairly easily because I've got everything loaded in, and I just like drag and drop, and it builds out the proposal for me based on what I enter in it. And clients can pay with a credit card or debit card if they choose to pay that way. Otherwise, I accept checks or ACH payments, which does not go through Dubsado. I don't know if Stripe has that capability. They possibly do, but I use Square. And the reason I have continued using Square, just as a shout out to Square, is that Square also has a savings account. So I can basically say, hey, through Sugar Creek, I want you to take 20% of this invoice and stick it into a Square savings account. And then once that happens, if my client is paying with credit card, then it goes into my savings account, and then I can then move it over to my Fidelity investment account. And it helps me, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it goes where I want it to go, and then I can invest it in to my Fidelity 500 and all of that. So, but that all originates in Dubsado, and I've been a fan for 5 years, a paying fan for 5 years. And here's the deal. If you use my code, use my link to try out Dubsado, I can give you 20% off your first month or your first year. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado. That's spelled D like dog, U like umbrella, B like boy, S like Sam, A like apple, D like dog, O like octopus. So it's bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado to take advantage of that offer specific to you, my listener. So huge fan of Dubsado. And yes, I will continue to be a huge fan because it keeps my Sugar Creek business super organized. And literally I have workflows. I'm just going to keep singing Dubsado's praises. I have workflows. You can set triggers. You can set to-dos. You can set reminders. You can set it to, send out emails if you want. You can put canned email responses in there. I have lots of canned email responses. You have forms, so you can do questionnaires. You can create a client portal so they can log in and have access to all the things. There's so much that you can do with Dubsado. So utilize my code, bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado to get 20% off your first month or 20% off your first year. Okay, so let's get into this week, the nuts and bolts. We're talking about time auditing. And this came about, and I can't remember if I've already said this or not in a previous episode, a most recent episode. You would be so incredibly surprised, what comes in my brain, what goes out my brain, what I latch onto, what I don't latch onto. So if I've already shared this, please forgive me for the repeat. I know I shared it in my email list, to my email list last week, but I don't remember if I shared it on the podcast. So recently, I got myself in a little bit of a tizzy because I felt like people in my orbit, some people in my orbit, were not meeting my expectations for them. Whether or not they knew about the expectations, that's probably a different story. But just so incredibly disappointed in people in my orbit. And I went to Facebook. I think I had like 400 and some odd friends. And it had to have been close to 500 because I kept 76. I deleted over 400 people off my Facebook. And I'm not going to go into what triggered that other than just utter disappointment in humans and the people in my orbit. And quitting a local organization that I had been the president of for 4 years of the time that I have been a part of the organization, which I believe started in 2015, 2016. And 4 of those years, the last 2, so 2022, 2023, and then I had a break at 21, but I was also 2019 and 2020. And I was treasurer before that, and then I was just a regular member prior to that. I quit the organization, and then I went on a rampage and deleted 400 Facebook friends, or over 400 Facebook friends. And it set up this, this domino effect for me. And I received a message today from a friend and could see that she was auditing her time. She was also auditing her orbit. And it got me thinking, and of course, I'm working on some reels for Boss Girl Creative. By the way, if you're not already following me over on Instagram, I would love that. Instagram is Boss Girl Creative. So I was working on some reels for Instagram, specifically for Boss Girl, and I started scrolling my feed to, I don't know what I was really on the hunt for. It might have been audios when I saw Gary V's post. So I follow Gary V. I love Gary V. And he happened to be talking about time audit. And I was like, oh, this is very kismet, because this is what has been going on in my world over the last few weeks, probably even more than a month. And he starts talking about his recent time at a card convention, a swap, a buy and sell. And I believe I don't know if it was limited to baseball cards or what, but I know he has a card line. And he talked about just finding so much joy being surrounded by people that had a very similar love to that. And that was cards, trading cards. And he basically said, listen, you need to audit your time. You need to audit the people that you allow into your orbit. Because if people are not serving you, then they need to be gone. You need to put boundaries in place for them to not have access to you anymore. And I was like, right on. That is exactly what I've been doing. I am in the same mindset of Gary V. Holy crap. And it got me thinking that what this really comes down to is the boundaries we put in place. Because without boundaries, we allow people access, or we spend too much time on, a certain thing that is either non-income producing or is income producing. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't involve yourself in non-income producing things. Like me sitting down and watching the Olympics, that is definitely not an income producing event for me in any way, shape, or form. It's bringing me joy, but that doesn't make me money. The Olympics, I mean. So I'm not saying do not do activities that don't bring you money or don't make you money. What I'm saying is I think it's incredibly important to audit your time, but also audit who has access to you and your time. Because if people are no longer serving you in a way that brings you joy, even if it's not attached to some income producing thing, if they don't bring you joy and it's too much work and you're producing all of this effort to include them or to, make sure they don't feel left out, whatever it might be, then you need to set a boundary that does not allow them any more access than what you want. And for me in Facebook, it was 400 people. Goodbye. And there's a possibility I accidentally deleted some people that I wasn't aiming to delete in this big, I don't even know, this big audit. Because Facebook stalled on me at one point, it froze, and then, that just infuriated me a little bit, and so then I'm jabbing buttons, and there may have been some people caught in the crossfire. So if you realize we're not Facebook friends anymore, don't take it out on me. Just send me a message, because it could have been you, and I don't remember. So, yeah, it could have been during that, I feel like it was Facebook calling a ceasefire, but here we are. And the people that I did remove, nobody said anything. If they have my phone number or even Instagram, nobody's reached out. So they probably don't know, which goes to the point of auditing access to me. And then the flip side of that is also, when we think about Facebook people, I would much rather you engage with me on Instagram, where I am trying to compete against an algorithm that is constantly changing. So if you want to support me, that's where I need you to go and support me. I don't need you paying attention or being nosy about what I choose to share on Facebook, which I probably share more private moments through Facebook than I do anywhere else. And I just don't need you being nosy about that. You know what I'm saying? You can pay attention to Instagram because that's way more curated for the businesses that I run, because I'm trying to attract people looking for those services. And so you can go support me there. I'm just thinking out loud, if those people really wanted to continue to support me, they have access to do that, but on a different platform. And this goes all the way. I feel like this is full circle, because I feel like we end up getting ourselves into these pickles where we get so incredibly frustrated with people in our orbit because they're not performing to the level that we expect them to perform, whether or not they know that expectation. And I feel like sometimes I get myself into these places where I'm like, is it me? Is it me? Because I feel like these things have continued to happen. So the common denominator is me. So, but what did I do? And why did it get me here? And what was I supposed to learn, if this was really just a learning moment? Or why were these people only supposed to be in my lives for, X amount of time that they were before something drastically changed in the relationship or friendship or whatever? And so I go back to, wow, this feels like I'm the common denominator. It's me. And I know from my personality that I do have really high expectations of people. And I mean, it's, when you meet me as a friend or we start forming a friendship, I don't walk up and say, hey, I'm Taylor. I have super high expectations for our friendship. I really hope you don't fail. Maybe I should put that on my name tag. But I feel like if I'm showing up and if I'm making effort, I have that expectation that that's also what you want. And then people just prove me wrong. And then I'm like, dang, I put a lot of effort into that. And that really sucks because it hurts. It absolutely hurts. And so, yeah, I went on a Facebook deleting frenzy. I was auditing my orbit, but also coming back to this, audit of other things. It's more than just people. It's the things that we choose to spend time on. And, I do hear I just don't know how you do it. And to be frank, I do it because I choose to. You have the same 24 hours that I have in the day. And I'm not saying you, I'm just saying metaphorically you. We all have the same hours in the day. And we all have choices to make on the daily. It's not just because I went this pathway and it worked, there were a lot of turns that got me there. Like, for example, we are in the process of buying land right now. And we found this beautiful piece of property and we made an offer. We already had approval for a mortgage company, and it's raw land. And I get it. Raw land is more expensive from a mortgage standpoint because there's nothing of value yet to a bank. And so we reached out to a mortgage friend who has helped us in the past. We've done loans through her in the past. And she was chomping at the bit. Yes, 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 we can do this. We can do this. No problem. The problem showed up last Friday when I learned that she had shopped the loan already. And I didn't realize that she herself could not do a land loan, that she had to go out and use a connection she had from the past, which is who she used to work for a long time ago. But that was never disclosed. So my contract says this is who my financing, my mortgage company is, et cetera, et cetera. These are the terms. The terms have seemed to change, which was also shocking. She supposedly wasn't aware that we were supposed to close on the 31st of July, which as of this recording is 2 days from now. And we're not like officially official, even though she's been working on it for a month. And the hoops, let me just like squirrel moment here. The hoops that an entrepreneur has to go through to get a loan are so incredibly disturbing that any subcontractor that I hire for my businesses that I legitimately 1099 at the end of the year based on how much I paid them, they can go to a lender and get a loan so much easier than the person giving them the 1099 or W-2. Like, what in the actual? Because my stuff shows up on a Schedule C with my taxes, not a 1099. Nobody's 1099ing me. Actually, they are. Some of my bigger corporate gigs are 1099ing me, but I account for that also in my revenue. So I have to still give those things, but it's not like a year's worth of income in a 1099. Like, it's just not. It's one event coming in, and they have to 1099 me because they paid me more than $600. So like, it's them tracking themselves too. But it's so frustrating. And here we are, and we can't close, and we're about to be on vacation for over 2 weeks in an area where it's just not conducive to try and close where we're going. And it's just all kinds of frustrating. And like, I keep putting up more option money. Like, we had an access issue that we had to solve with easements and like adjusting the surveys, etc. And now I have to extend the contract. And I'm not kidding when I say the sellers are like in shock because they learned of this today and we were supposed to close on the 31st. And they're in shock because they don't understand why we didn't know this any sooner. And it's because we just found out on Friday. And they had the weekend to try to come up with a solution, and the solution wasn't a good one. The solution was me paying cash, which we could have done, but like, that's not what we wanted to do. And even if we had to go down that road, we would still be closing in the middle of August, because when you sell your, stock portfolio or some of your stocks, you don't just get the money right away. You have to wait for the channels to do what they do, and then eventually it lands. And there's a lot of time involved to do something like that. So frustrating. All that to say, to go back to my original point, is that the same 24 hours that I have, you also have. And my choices in life have led me to here, but I'm still dealing with crazy. It's just on a different, I don't even know, horizontal. It's on a different plane. It's on a different axis. I'm still dealing with crazy because of the choices that I've made. And I just have to audit myself. Okay, Is that going to lead me to where I want to go? Yes. Okay. So I have to keep staying on this crazy train because at the end is worth it. The end is a much lower mortgage rate once we finally build and that, the full cycle closes out. So it's land to construction to, actual house mortgage. I can get a much better rate than I could if I just talked to my banker, which my banker is the one who wanted us to go this pathway. I just don't know that my mortgager properly communicated the fact that she can't do land loans, that she has to outsource that. And had I known that, I would have just stuck with my banker and then set up an interim and into a construction and then into a mortgage and then shopped the mortgage after. Oh gosh, you try to do something and then it's almost like you get penalized for being an entrepreneur. That's how I feel. I feel like I'm being penalized for being an entrepreneur to buy land that's really not that expensive and I could pay cash for it. I just don't want to exhaust my resources to do it that way when I know I have to hire excavators and I have to hire people to come out and do clearing and all of that kind of things. And then I have to build a house and anyways, it's just frustrating. All that to say, time audit, people audit, thing audit. I think it's so incredibly important that we perform these things routinely so that we are making sure the income producing activities that we invest time in actually work or are working for us, that the things that aren't income producing are bringing us joy, and the people that have access to us are making our lives better in some manner. End of story. That's how you audit. And I think we should do this way more frequently than we do. I think because of social media, truly, I think we give access to ourselves freely. And I think we need to stop that. So that's my advice for auditing your time, your people, your activities. And I hope you do it soon. I hope you do it sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Again, check out Dubsado. If you're looking for a client relationship management software or a business solution that helps you keep track of, working with clients or even selling, time blocks for something, I think you could even possibly use it for product-based businesses. I don't have a lot of experience with that, so I don't really know, because I utilize Etsy for the tailored home and selling my vintage stuff through there. But I think it's possible if you were doing one-offs for people, if you were doing custom projects, absolutely you could use Dubsado for that. So check it out. Go to bossgirlcreative.com/Dubsado. And until next time, I hope you have a great rest of the week. Hey, real quick before I go, I wanted to pop back in and say again, thank you so much for listening to this latest episode of the Purposely Aligned Entrepreneur Podcast. I would so love a favor from you right now. Would you please share this episode with a friend or share it to your social media and tag me at Boss Girl Creative? Oh my gosh, that would mean so much to me if you did that right now. Okay, I'll see you next week with a brand new episode.